Hi, my name is Deroy, and this is Millennial Reasonings, short presentations from a Jamaican born millennial living in North America on topics I find interesting: history, migration, politics, and culture. And this is episode 1: The People Who Came and Left. The people of the Caribbean have always been a migratory people. I always knew this somewhat subconsciously, but it was only when I became a migrant myself that I became fascinated with the movement of people, particularly Jamaicans and people of African descent, from one place to another. I therefore thought migration would be a fitting topic to kick off my channel and series of reasonings. More specifically, the topic of the people who came and I suppose who eventually left the Caribbean. Furthermore, "The People Who Came" is the title of a history textbook I used back in high school, and so as a lifelong student of history, the phrase evokes a sense of nostalgia. So, here we go. The people of the Caribbean are migratory people. The Caribbean is a region composed of people from all over the globe, including those taken there by force and those who migrated freely. The people of the Caribbean, therefore, as I've said, have always been a migratory people. The Siboneyes. The Siboneyes were the earliest peoples to arrive in the islands of the Caribbean. Most of what we know of the Siboneyes is from the accounts of the Spaniards and archaeological evidence. The Siboneyes lived in Jamaica, the Bahamas, Cuba, and Haiti. They lived in the island since about 1000 BC and were probably overrun by the Arawaks who followed them. The Siboneyes were hunter-gatherers with no knowledge of agriculture. They were, however, skilled with stone tools and enjoyed a reasonable life with a well-balanced, protein-rich diet. The Arawakan Peoples. The Arawakan peoples were the first to encounter Europeans in the 15th century. Traditionally, the Arawakan peoples were thought of as one group, but more recent history has indicated that there were several groups that can be identified by where they settled. Among these Arawakan peoples were the Taino of the Greater Antilles, the Lucayans of the Bahamas, and the Ignarians of Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados. These different groups all spoke a common language. Their language was called Arawakan. The Taino migrated and settled in the Greater Antilles by the 10th century. The Tainos were the most advanced of the island peoples. This was seen in the level of development attained in Hispaniola, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. Beginning in the 16th century, many were killed or expelled from the islands by European forces. Enslavement, starvation, and disease reduced them to a few thousand by 1520 and to near extinction by 1550. Those who survived mixed with Spaniards, Africans, and others. Taino culture was largely wiped out. The Europeans. The European arrival in the Caribbean began in 1492 with the first landing of Christopher Columbus. Columbus claimed many of the Caribbean islands for Spain, and for much of the 16th century, Spain's claims went unchallenged by other European powers. However, from the early 17th century, people from other European powers, including France and England, started settling in the region. England was the most successful of the northwestern European powers in usurping Spain's influence in the Caribbean. By 1655, when they captured Jamaica, English colonies had been established in Nevis, Antigua, and Montserrat. Merchants and plantation owners moved into the region during this time, and in the case of England, indentured servants, political dissidents, and others from the British Islands provided the first plantation labor. When the Caribbean was first colonized by Spain in the 15th century, a system of sugar planting and enslavement evolved. However, the plantation system really took hold in the 17th century, with the production of sugar and coffee on plantations particularly in the British and French territories, using slave labor imported from West Africa. The Africans. The biggest migration to the Caribbean was a forced migration of enslaved people from Africa through the transatlantic trade in captured Africans. Between 1662 and 1807, Britain shipped approximately 3.1 million Africans across the Atlantic Ocean in the transatlantic trade in captured Africans. Africans were forcibly brought to British-owned colonies in the Caribbean and sold as slaves to work on plantations. However, the enslaved people constantly rebelled against slavery right up until emancipation in 1834. The most spectacular of these rebellions took place during the 18th and 19th centuries and included Taki's Rebellion in Jamaica in the 1760s, the Haitian Revolution, which started in 1789, and the 1831 Christmas Rebellion in Jamaica led by Sam Sharpe. Voices of dissent also began emerging in Britain, highlighting the inhumane conditions of enslaved people. Indentured laborers, the Indians and Chinese. Indentured laborers from India and China started arriving in the 19th century. They migrated to the Caribbean to work on plantations in places such as Jamaica, Trinidad, and British Guyana, now Guyana. Several other groups of people, such as the Syrians and the Lebanese, also migrated to the Caribbean toward the end of the 19th century. The migration story continues. In the post-emancipation era, workers from British Caribbean islands also moved to neighboring Spanish islands and Central America in search of work. One of the main projects that attracted such workers was the building of the Panama Canal. Also, during both World Wars, Caribbean people traveled abroad to serve with the British Armed Forces alongside other members of the British Empire. Subsequently, thousands of people from the Caribbean migrated to Britain between 1948 and 1971 to help fill post-war labor shortages. These persons have been labeled the Windrush Generation, many of whom faced unjust treatment during the recent Windrush scandal in the UK. Thousands of people from the Caribbean have also migrated to North America in the post-World War II era, especially from the 1970s onwards. There is a poem by the esteemed historian, poet, and activist Alma Norman that I think serves as an appropriate conclusion to this presentation. Norman, who interestingly was an American by birth, but who migrated to Jamaica after meeting and marrying her Jamaican-born husband, Dr. David Wiley Norman, while studying at McGill University in Montreal, Canada, wrote a number of poems about Jamaica, as well as a history textbook. The last line from that poem that comes to mind, Jamaica Wanderers, reads, "Oh, anywhere you care to go, you'll find Jamaica men." That's a fact, and history and some of the stories I intend to tell through this channel will highlight that. This has been Millennial Reasonings. Thanks for watching.